Hey guys, welcome back to Sober Psychology. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys. If you're new to the channel, if you're swinging by, you've been lurking for a while, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Helps us out. We got a really cool episode. This is our first official guest, Miss Barbie Hahn. She's a dear friend of mine. She is the Alpha Queen. We'll explain that later. She is a warrior. She's someone that I've connected with for a long time, and we're kind of kindred spirits in the way that we've dealt with trauma, the way that we've overcome things, what we've experienced. So I'm hoping that she's able to provide a really unique perspective that some of you don't get from listening to me blab on and on and on week in and week out. Barbie is an incredible wife, an incredible mom. She was formerly a teacher. She has incredible knowledge of the human psyche as well. So this will be an incredible opportunity for everybody to listen in, to hear how she has struggled and how she has survived and how she has overcome. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Barbie Hahn to let her introduce herself.
Michael, that was the best. Like, we can end the podcast here. Thanks, guys. Been great.
Thanks, guys.
So great. That was the episode. Y'all have a good one. No, I'm honored to be here. Truthfully, Michael, just like I shared earlier, like I'm just really honored to be here, to know your story, to know how you have overcome, and that you taking all of that and then making this podcast and seeing what you've done with Sober Psychology, I think has just been really cool. And I'm really honored that you would find me and my story and my knowledge worthy to share this platform with you. So I'm excited. Like Michael said, we have a history. We worked at a summer camp together. I look up to him like an older brother. Kindred spirits, just in a lot of parallels in our stories and the things that we've been through. So I'm honored to be here. I'm excited.
Thank you. What y'all don't know, what you didn't see, is that we talked for about an hour and 20 minutes before we hit record, and some of the best conversation I've had in a very long time, which those were gems. We should have hit record. We didn't.
Should have.
So you guys get to you get to hear the new perspective of the same information. That's the best part. So, well, Barbie, we talked about it a lot. We've you're an Enneagram 7 wing 8. Yep. I'm an 8, probably wing 9, I think, maybe. Okay. But that was interesting to me knowing that early on, because although we share the same number and we have a lot of the same responses, we also deal with things in uniquely different ways at the same time.
For sure.
I bull rush things. My biggest fear is being betrayed. That's my biggest hurt. As a 7 wing 8, typically the core fears for those are like being trapped or in pain or deprivation, things like that. And so your instinct typically is to like reframe or escape or to find the silver lining. So that's what I'm excited to hear about too, is that perspective. But I guess we'll kind of start off with like the early years, and you just tell whatever you want to tell. But we both share that like unique experience of being raised by the baby boomer mothers who came from the grandparents of the silent generation or whatever, and whether or not they display narcissistic traits, there's still a lot of pain there. There's a lot of things that we've had to navigate now as parents and as adults. But for those listening who might not understand what that looks like behind closed doors, how would you describe the atmosphere of your childhood?
Great question. So I would describe the atmosphere of my childhood very intense. I would say like the house that I grew up in, the situations, the circumstances that happened to me as a kid, it was very intense. And so as I reflect on it, it's funny because being an Enneagram 7 and knowing that that's my bend and my personality, as someone who is extremely optimistic, as someone who is adventure seeking, as someone who has a big personality, somewhat funny, whatever, I'll give myself that credit. Having grown up in something like that, like such intensity of emotion is a lot. So when I think about my childhood, my home was very unsafe. It was an unsafe space. And so the things I would do as a kid is I would get on my bike, and my 2 wheels were freedom. And so I would just ride my bike all over my neighborhood as a kid. I hung out with a bunch of guys. I was the only girl in my neighborhood, so I grew up very tomboy, and I just was adventure seeking with them. Anything that like felt like freedom being like a set of wheels, whether that be in a bike or a skateboard, whatever. I was out until the streetlights came on, like very much that mentality of like, had a mom who, we didn't have phones, we didn't have things like that, and we lived in a different time where we didn't have Life 360 where moms were tracking your location all the time. And so for me, it's funny as I look back and knowing more about my personality now as an adult, how much of being an Enneagram 7 really, like, attributes of it just showing in my childhood and just how I was responding to a lot of the trauma and the environment that I grew up in. And so, yeah, I mean, I was very adventure seeking. I was always of the mindset of like, I don't want what's happening around in my home. I don't want this for myself. So what else could I have? Daydreaming. I was very much like a daydreamer. You know, I could never have like just like a simple dream. It was always something like, if I'm going to be a photographer, I'm going to go be a sport photographer for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go, you know, it was always like, had to be big. Like, there was no thing that was like unattainable in my brain as a kid. But a lot of that was also masking, and a lot of it, like what you said, like the unhealthy parts of being an Enneagram 7, in the sense of like, oftentimes it was the driving force of that was being like, I feel trapped, I feel stuck, and this is just like boring, or like it's like scary to just be in one place. Like there's so much going on. Like there has to be more out there. Like, how do I figure out what that is? So yeah, that's kind of like my personality as a kid in the environment that I grew up in. Totally opposite. Intensity, and like my house being full of like a lot of anger, a lot of rage, a lot of things that I don't in my natural bend feel or sit with. A lot of sadness too. I would say that like my childhood had a lot of sadness, lost my dad when I was 5. And so just a lot of just hurt and pain in my household. And so for me, somehow in my wiring, I was like, I will find the sunshine. I will find a way to enjoy and figure out a way to have joy, come hell or high water, which is that Enneagram 8 in me.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah. It's crazy. I'm learning about kids that their brains develop in what you would consider a war zone in the home. It's interesting how those traits come out. And I've learned that with my own marriage you get pushed into this fight or flight mode when you are growing up in a war zone, and like my dad being abusive and my mom being, you know, emotionally abusive and dismissive and all of that. I learned, instead of withdrawing and being defensive, I learned that the only way to survive is to be offensive. And it developed this level of aggression in me, I guess, of pushing too much. I mean, that's the problem with Enneagram 8s, is we tend to be bullies or perceived that way. But it's interesting how you start to develop in that way just because of your upbringing. And I've been hard on this recently where when, you know, as someone who's recovered now, like, you're always the problem. It's always you're doing this and you're doing that and you're the issue and whatnot. And it's never the parent's fault. It's never, you know, this isn't the reason he's this way. He's just a bad egg or whatnot. But then you get recovered, you get sober, you start getting mentally healthy, you do therapy. And then all of a sudden it turns back and it's like, oh, well, that's because I raised him the right way. It's like, hold up. You didn't want to take credit for it back then. But when it was like, oh, maybe I did something that kind of pushed him into that direction. Yeah. But now that everything is good, you want to take full credit for it. So it's interesting to start thinking down that vein, because you start to understand more about the millennial generation of like, you know what, like nobody is responsible for my mental health other than me. And I try and maintain the aspect like no one's at fault. However, there are people who cause trauma. You're at fault. It's your fault. It doesn't make me the victim, but also when I get mentally healthy, you don't get to take credit for that. You know, back off, homie. Okay, so you touched on it a little bit, but you lost your dad at an early age. Yeah. And so oftentimes in the family dynamic, when the healthier parent or the buffer, if you will, is removed from the home with either a narcissistic parent or an unhealthy parent, it usually shifts that entire family dynamic. So how did his passing change your relationship with your mom? So
my dad's death, like, I think really like just was the hinge point of where I'm at now with my family, because, you know, this moment happens in my life when I'm 5 years old. So like you talk about a pivotal time in childhood development, like adolescent development, like 5, kindergarten, starting school, all of that. I have an older sibling who's 10, and that older sibling 10 years old, coming into like teenage years, you know, just right around the bend, and had a very close relationship with my father. Whereas for me, like, I knew I had a connection to my dad. I felt connected to my dad, but I'm 5, you know, so like memory is still forming, and memory is like really starting to happen. And then you have my mom, and my mom, when my dad passed away, so her husband, she was 35 or 37, somewhere between that range. And like, these are the ages that like we're coming up on, Michael, you know, so it's like crazy. Like I'm able to like look now in my adult life back on it and have a bit of a perspective of like, that had to have been really challenging and really hard. But, you know, being raised by, you know, baby boomer parent who, you know, grew up where you don't talk about emotion, you don't deal with emotion, you just have to like take care of what needs to be taken care of. She loses her husband and she has 2 kids. She has a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. She's now a single mom. She has a house. She has a mortgage. She isn't college educated. She has her high school diploma. She's working, you know, in the telephone companies, in low level management, like pretty much like in corporations where it's like you're doing a lot of grunt work. As soon as like a refi happens or a sale happens, like we, you know, acquire companies. My mom's like branch was always the first to get laid off, you know? So just a lot of instability. So like my dad's death, like it definitely changed the dynamic where I feel like 3 people were impacted and all 3 people responded differently. And so the older sibling turned to a lot of like, you know, alcohol, drugs, sex at a very early age. And then I would say what I experienced from my mother, just a lot of lethargy. I mean, rightfully so in certain situations, you know, I mean, she just was tired, which makes sense. I mean, you're a single mom and you're having to like pay the bills, feed the kids, do all the things. But that being said, she still is a human and she still has desires. She still has needs and things that she was finding outlets for. So, looking back on it now as an adult, my mom really prioritized herself, you know, her needs. And those are things like she was prioritizing like her sex life. She was prioritizing her leisure life and gambling and drinking. My mom wasn't an alcoholic by any means, but my mom, you know, it was a leisurely drinker. The type of men that my mom dated were all alcoholics. And so she just was going through a revolving door of just like men. And I don't know what the motivation for that was. We've never talked about it, but you know, my mom had her own vices. My older sibling unfortunately found their own vices, and they all were related to like men and drugs or men and alcohol. And so for me, in my child, like, you know, in my wiring, I was very observant and was like, I don't want that. Like, that just doesn't seem like it's giving a whole lot of life. If anything, it's like it's causing a whole lot of destruction. And so that impacted just my mother and I specifically relationship. My older sibling, typically when you lose a parent, you know, I'm the youngest sister, and so I have, you know, an older sibling, and that sibling became almost like a parent, where it was like her sole responsibility was to take care of younger sister now. That's a lot of pressure on a 10-year-old. Yeah. So good and bad. That sibling just was very unkind in how she spoke to me, and just would say things that were just unnecessary, but developed a lot of my self-worth, a lot of like narrative thinking in my head. And a lot of that is just stemmed from, I think, jealousy. I think she was like, I'm the older sibling and I'm having to take care of you. I can't do what it's just like an added layer of responsibility for her. And so that impacted our relationship because she was no longer just like older sis. She was now like another parent. And she didn't deserve that. She shouldn't have had to have done that. But it was just like, it just changed the dynamic where my mom now suddenly leans on the older sibling to be like, help with these things. And as she got older, that leaning of support turned into like helping out financially, helping out with things around the house, things that like weren't necessarily being put on me because of I was the younger sibling. But it just impacted us in different ways. And so for me, you know, I was like, this environment, it's just not a good time. And it's like, it's not fun. So I'm like, where's the fun happening? How can I escape? You see what I'm saying? It's like, as a kid, it's like, where can I go feel safe and where can I go have some fun, because
Yeah.
this is just not fun. And so that turned into like other friends' houses, playing outside, going to church youth groups. I grew up in a lot of financial instability, so I grew up very poor as well. And so my mom didn't have a lot of money and was a kid of like, a lot of instability. Didn't know if the lights were going to be on, didn't know if we were going to have food that evening. And so I was always just thinking like, where's free food? Well, youth groups, if you're familiar with like youth groups, they're always like free pizza on a Wednesday. And I'm like, well, I could care less about what you have to say about Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm coming for some cheese pizza. Because like I'm gonna get fed, and so I was like, that was the thing. Like school provided a lot of structure where it was like, I was able to escape. Like school was an escape from my home. It was escape from all the sadness and the just utter despair that really reeked the walls of my home. It was just a really unsafe space. And so that death really just caused 3 women to respond differently. My mom turned her home vices and just apathy and laziness. And then my older sister, she just was angry and entitled to that anger she felt, and just was older sibling and just a bit more rebellion in her adolescent years, which is like totally common and normal for teenagers to rebel. But she rebelled to an extent where decisions she made at like 15 impacted her life until her 30s. And for me, I was like, I see what my older siblings doing, I'm not going to do that. And so I kind of kept out a lot of what was happening in my home, because I was like, what else is out there that isn't that? So
Yeah. It's interesting because I think you are very aware, which is great. Like I oftentimes get tunneled in on how did my upbringing affect me, and up until the past 5 years, I never really considered my mom's perspective in exactly what you said. Like she was my age, like that's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I got all of my BS out of the way in my 20s, but she's in her 30s and had, an abusive husband who just left and all this stuff. So it's like, how do you navigate that? I wouldn't do a great job if something happened to Skylar and I'm having to navigate being a single dad. Not that, that was my dad's story, because boy don't have responsibilities, but But yeah, it's just really interesting how it affects siblings as well. Like my brother and I are a lot alike, but outrageously different and handle it differently. And whereas, we're going to get into this later on in the conversation, but whereas for me as an 8, it typically is I go to self-preservation and I'll put up the walls real quick, and those walls are thick and nobody's getting out, nobody's coming in. And so it's interesting. Whereas like my brother, I think he was more lost in all of it, but mom attached to him. That's my little baby.
Yep.
Whereas me, I'm my dad. And so from an early age, it was like I felt like the ostracized outcast.
Yeah.
Because I look like my dad. And you go look at my criminal record, I ended up acting like my dad. Like it's weird how all of that dynamic shifts as soon as one parent leaves the dynamic, even whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy. It still is crazy how those personality traits really start to form in that and come out.
Yep.
So unhealthy and narcissistic parents typically are worried about outward appearance. They're highly concerned with that outward appearance. So when did you first realize that your family's dynamic wasn't, I guess, normal?
Oh my gosh.
How did you ultimately process that as a kid?
So honestly, I didn't realize that my family's day-to-day wasn't normal until college. And because through like high school, like my primary school, like public school, elementary, middle, and high school, I just very much like existed off my personality. School was safe. So for me, I could be my quote unquote full authentic self at school. And so that being like, I could be the class clown. I could, do photography. I could play basketball. I could do this. I mean, all of these things are just such Enneagram 7 like wirings. It was like, why pick one when I can have it all? Like I can do all the extracurriculars. I can, anywho. So like I was able to just like really express my full personality at school. And so I wasn't very truthful about what was happening at home, because my home was very, like I said, like it was intense with like anger and lashing out. My mom and my sister both had like revolving doors of just men and unhealthy men that were in our home, and you can just use your own mind to like put together what was taking place in my home, right? Like You have drugs, you have alcohol, and you have unhealthy men, and it's just like, it's a beautiful concoction for disaster. And so I was exposed to a lot of like, you know, call it for what it is, and if you have to edit this, Michael, you can, but it was like very pornographic in my home. Like, it was a very pornographic environment, and I just was always the type of person that like I would get scared when the sun went down because I was like, I have to sleep at home. And so like the nighttime was always like just terrifying for me. And so for me, I was always like scheming, not unknowingly. I can say it was scheming now, but I was always scheming like, how do I not experience this anymore? How do I get out of this environment, my home? And I was like, okay, I'm in high school. What's the next step? College. So I figure out, how do I get to college? Like, where do I go? I have no money. Nobody in my family has ever gone before. My sister didn't pave this path. My mom could care less. Genuinely, my mom could care less what I do. She's not super supportive, but she's not being like super like helpful either, you know, or like causing a hindrance. She just was like there and was just like, if that's what you're gonna do, then figure it out type of thing. And so here I am, 17, 18 years old, and I'm like, fine, I'm gonna figure this out. So by the help of some teachers and stuff, I end up in college. And you know, my mom didn't move me into my dorm. A high school teacher moved me in, and I just was like, this woman's just being super supportive. Like, she's like a part of this like champion of like, we're gonna get this girl out of her situation. And I remember it was like probably like the first 3 weeks of school. I'm living in the dorms. I'm on my own. This is the first time I'm not living in my house. That was like emotionally abusive towards me and sexually abusive towards me. And this is the first time I'm like experiencing some semblance of like peace and calm and steady. And suddenly like I feel like uneasy because I'm like, wait, what's happening? And I'm just starting to like gather information, listening to other friends, people's stories, like all this stuff. And suddenly in my brain, I was like, wait a minute, that I don't have shared experiences with these people. Yeah. And now I don't know how to talk about, even more so. I don't know how to relate. I don't know how to connect. I don't know how to share like why college is so hard for me. Because a lot of my friends, like if they failed a test, they could call their mom. If I failed a test, I just had to stand there and hold this failed biology test, like with just myself. Yeah. And then that's when I realized like my upbringing is totally different than everybody around me. Everybody has this support. Everybody has this parent or parents involved in healthy ways or not so healthy ways in their lives, but they have parental involvement. And I realized in college, I was like, I've never had parental involvement. I have been the voice and like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like I guess like conductor of my own life. Like I've been able to say I'm doing this. My mom's never caused a hindrance, but my mom never like came alongside and supported. And so it's like a weird like enigma of that, of like, I really just had to like if I had an idea, I had to figure it out. So that Enneagram 8 wing in me of being like, okay, like you're going to give me a challenge, watch, like I'll figure it out. Yeah. But then my Enneagram 7 is like, and I'm going to have a good time while I do it. So, and it may come out type B, it may come out unorganized, but somehow things just work out for me. So, which is like the power of God. But yeah, like I would say college was the first time I realized my family dynamic was very unsafe and like was like and seeing friends who had like healthy relationships with their mom was really hard for me because they could call mom, you know, they were going through college, you're in your 20s, it's all self-discovery, and they were able to go, oh, I got mom, I can dial up mom, or like, hey mom, can you pay for my movie ticket to go see the Hunger Games? And I'm over here like, dude, I'm hustling, like I don't have anybody putting money in my account, like this is all me. It's me. And I'm 19 years old. Like I'm still like a kid, you know? So yeah, I would say college. Like it was literally me going my freshman year of college was where like the pool got bigger and I was like, whoa. Yeah. They've had some normalcy and I've had trauma.
Man. Yeah, it's interesting when you start becoming friends with people who have and everybody's family has some level of unhealthy environment. But when you start seeing the difference between unhealthy and toxic, like that was tough for me growing up in a toxic home. And the hardest part is being in a small town. My family's all about appearances. It's all about we have to look good. We got to play the part. I mean, like my grandparents are probably they're the one percenters in the small town I grew up in, which isn't saying much, but they came from freaking just Ringgold, Louisiana, and like just these low down. My grandfather was one of 13 kids, and they used to keep him warm during the winter by putting him in the oven, like having the oven door open and sitting up chairs around the oven. And he had all sisters that were older than him, so he was wearing hand-me-down, remade clothings, dresses and stuff. Yeah. And so, but then they get into this small town mentality, into this pompousness, this arrogance begins to stir because it's like, well, we found a way to make some money. They're part of the silent generation. That
a little tinge of pretension,
Oh yeah. But then I see the same thing with my mom, and that was hard for me because, like, I remember we had a babysitter. My brother and I had a babysitter when we were growing up who sexually abused both of us. And I remember when that happened, and then my little brother's the one that told my parents. Yeah. And my dad, of course, reacted in anger. And so he's trying to get all these answers out of us, but he's angry. Yeah. And then mom, she acted kind of in this panic mode. Neither one of them ever talked to us about it. Yep. We never worked through it. Never got it off our chest. It was all about, let's get the answers so we can go and hurt this person. Yep. But then let's never talk about it again. Same thing when my parents got their divorce. It's like, we can't talk about it. We can't, and so that was something that I grew up in early, is like, we got to at least pretend that everything's okay. Yeah. And it's not. Yeah. And, you and I discussed this before we hit record, but I don't want to be the disruptor for things. I want, despite my personality type, I want there to be peace. Peace, yeah. But I also will not stay quiet just to pretend that everything is okay when it's not. Yeah. Because in my mind, peace comes from being able to iron out and work through things, the speed bumps and the hang-ups. And if you're going to fake it and pretend it, that's not peace.
That's the thing that's hard, I think, for eights, and like knowing that I wing eight, I can't handle like people who aren't authentic or like can't call a situation for what it is. Like, call a spade a spade, but don't just get caught up in like calling something for what it is. Like, how do we progress forward? Because for me, that's like in a 7 where it's like, okay, can we address the elephant in the room? Can we call the spade? And then can we figure out, how do we learn to heal from this, live with it? And then how do we like love each other, have a good time, enjoy each other? And you know what I mean? Like, how do we do that? Because like I'm the same way. I think that's what's so hard. And knowing our history and the two of us, like, we can sniff inauthenticity out before anybody else, like instantly. And and we've had moments too where it's like, you know what, we're gonna let that play out the way it's gonna play out, and we're not gonna say anything right now. And it's not like, oh, we can't wait to be right, because we already have the pride of knowing we're gonna be right. So it's like when it happens, we're like, it's, and I don't know if that's like discernment. It might be. I'm like kind of into spiritual giftings. Like, I think that is discernment. I think the Holy Spirit has given me the ability to like read situations, and I'm only able to do that based off of allowing the Spirit to be at work in me. But I think that, like, you mentioning that, I'm like, like, that's really hard in my personality when it's like, I have every right and can talk about my past and my experience the way that I want to, because it was my lived reality. But like, my family doesn't want to address that was the truth. Like, they don't want to address the truth. They want to avoid it or act like it never happened, which is crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's, if you go back and look at history of humanity, can someone in the comments please tell me when sweeping pain and trauma under the rug actually worked out? Because if you can tell me that, I'll go ahead and I'll buy into it. It doesn't freaking work. And there's a reason for that. And that's the beauty of humanity. Everybody deals with things differently. I think, going to your point, I do believe in spiritual gifts as well. I do believe in the spirit of discernment. And that's some people that can be developed over time. Some people just have it. I think for me, realizing, the upbringing now, like growing up in that war zone type of environment, I learned to read people at an early age, which I took that to an unhealthy route, and became a manipulator and a liar, and I could do what I want, but it was always pining my mom against my dad, and I'm going to get this and that. But I struggle with this a lot today because it takes me 30 seconds of
Yep.
talking to someone
Same.
before I realize you're full of
Same.
shit. Like, I
Yep,
don't want to deal I don't want to deal with you.
Same. And
Like,
it drives my
good
husband
luck.
crazy because, like, I can't explain it. Like, because Kevin, you know my husband. Like, my husband is very much someone who, he needs hard evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I can't give you hard evidence about this. Like, it's just like this. It's a feeling. Like, it's just this
intuition.
thing. It's an intuition. And he's like, well, and then sure enough, it's like, Barbie, you were right. And I'm like, yeah, like, I know.
Yeah.
I'm not like over here like, oh yeah, I know I'm right. Like boost me up. I'm like, I like had this, like, I don't know. It's like discernment. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, it is. And it's, again, I think a lot of it's developed under stressful times, like kids at an early age. I've met other kids, like, I say kids, but they're like teenagers younger, and they have that same trait because they grew up in a hostile environment. When we were at camp, I mean, a lot of those boys, you know, because I had the older kids' cabins there for a couple of weeks, and like a lot of those boys grew up in very dangerous environments where they were that way, and they could tell when you're full of garbage. And it's like, I get it, fella, I get it.
Yeah.
But like, so we'll kind of go into like now that we're talking about it, we'll kind of go into the coping mechanisms and stuff of our numbers and then just us in general. But so we speak kind of the same language Enneagram wise. It's just flipped. And so me being an 8-wing 7 and you're a 7-wing 8, type 7s are notorious for running from pain and reframing the trauma or even like staying busy, you know, and we talked about that a little bit. So how did being a 7 help you survive your mother, and when did that coping mechanism stop working for you altogether?
So I would say it helped me survive like my mom in my childhood by like what I've kind of like touched on, just like play. I think as a kid, like I really leaned heavily into play. And I think I had a wild imagination due in part to the fact that, like, you know, I'm an Enneagram 7. I don't want to be angry and I don't want to feel sad. So like I don't want to feel those things. And so I'm gonna come up with like greater ideas in my head. And so I lived a lot in my head. And then I can see how that developed even like in high school. You know, I had this dream of like, I'm gonna go make it in New York. I'm gonna go live in New York. And I think about that time myself now, and that time I'm like, I would have not made it in New York. But in my personality, and you know, I just visited New York recently, so like shout out to my husband for making like childhood dreams like really like actualize and coming true. But I thrive I genuinely thrive in places like Disney World. And I thrive in places like New York because it's like, how can you ever be bored? You know, it's just like, it's constant. And so for me, I struggled the most, like I've said, when I had to sit at home and sit in the sadness and sit in the intensity of my house. And so my coping mechanism was like, how do I find ways to not be at home, to not be here? And so I would do things like, this church is having a summer camp that's a week long. Let's figure out how I can go. I was like scholarship kid. I'd go to summer camp, you know, and it wasn't like camp like what we worked at. It was more like church camp where it was like they take the group somewhere. And so like, I mean, that's a week. That's a week of time away from home. And then in college, you know, had a weird living situation that, you know, is too much backstory to get into. But I knew when I got to college, I had created this environment that was safe. And I started having the reins of what my physical body got to be involved in. Whereas like as a kid, I had no control over that and was very much in an environment where I was physically unsafe. And so when I got into college and I was able to take the reins of that, I just, again, like now I call it scheming, but I was like thinking through like, how do I avoid? Enneagram 7. How do I avoid having to live back home? How do I, like, what do I do? And so then camp came across my path, and that's 10 weeks. That's a whole summer, paid room and board. Yeah. And I get to ride banana boats with kids, go lake tubing, get to be full personality, myself, full of energy, like literally all things that are just like right here at the surface, you know, where it's like there's a lot going on with me in my soul and in my mind, but I could thrive just in my personality of like, this is an adventure. I'm going to go live at a summer camp in East Texas for 10 weeks and I'm going to get paid. That's
Yeah.
even better. So it's like really and truly, it's just like me being like having the Enneagram language now to understand it of like, yeah, I'm such a 7 through and through. Like, you know, like I will reframe anything. Like just recently, I did a duathlon, so just this weekend, and I was doing it with a friend. So I had to run a mile, bike 12 miles, and then run a 5K. And as we were going to the event, Michael, as we're going to the event, my friend's car gets a flat. She's immediately like, oh my gosh, because she's an Enneagram 6. So it's like anxiety. And I'm like, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. Like, just get to the next exit. We get to the next exit. We're an hour out from like our start time. And we're 4 miles away from the start line and where the event's taking place. And I look at her and I was like, we have our bikes. So like,
Yes.
so we had to bike to the event. As we're biking to the event, you know what I do? I look over, I'm like, hey, look at the sunrise. like it's just like like Enneagram 7 is like, so I'm like textbook. Here I am in an environment where it's like, there's an issue. It's annoying. It's frustrating, you know, and I'm over here like, don't feel annoyed. Don't feel frustrated. We're going to be okay. Immediately. We're going to be okay. Okay, now we have to bike. Okay, I have to bike. This is not my first pick, but like we're gonna have to do this anyway. So let's just bike to the event. And then as we're in this like, you know, heightened anxiety, crazy moment, I'm like, look around, look at the sunrise, look how beautiful that is. Rather than just addressing the situation. So like to connect that back to your original question, I mean, I was an escape artist. I literally was just unknowingly like, how do I escape? And the thing that changed it the most was the most unexpected thing I would have ever thought for myself. And that was getting married. Because you talk about marriage being grounding, settling, can be trapping for some people. And when I met my sweet husband, who you also know, and his personality, I call him the anchor to my feather in the wind, because without him and the good parts of him, I think I would have just been on this endless cycle of what's the next escape? What's the next thing? What's the next adventure? What's this? You know, I mean, I missed my calling. I could have made it on Instagram like all these other people living in vans and traveling to hostels and like literally like everyone who knew me back at camp could totally be like, that's what Barbie's going to go do. Like we can see that. But
could have been a Utah influencer.
Gosh, no, not one of those. But like bring it back, you know, like I think the thing that like broke me out of it was meeting my husband and God using that relationship in a way to be like, hey, you need some steady. And you talk about, I got a steady Eddie. Like he's the most steady thing in my life that I've ever had. And I kind of still wrestle. And if we get into marriage here, but I wrestle with that a little bit too sometimes where I'm like, this is hard for me and my personality because you talk about my whole adolescence. So much of my life, my 20s was just like experiential, escape, avoid, feel happy. Because I had experienced such sadness and I experienced such grief early on in my life where I was like, life can change on a dime. Like I lost my dad at the age of 5 and had to really sit in that disparity, that sadness. And I was like, life's too short. Let's have fun.
For sure. For sure. And that's understandable. It's interesting how like just facing your reality changes things. I'm big right now, and I think my focus for my master's is going to be a lot about Jungian theory. I love Carl Jung. That's my homeboy. But his whole thing was the shadow and, you know, facing the shadow. And I connect that a lot with my experience going through rehab is like you get to step 4 and you're writing an inventory of everything. And
oh my gosh. Yep.
And I hated it. I hated it because for the first time in my life, I'm addressing these things, these rocks that I kept putting into a backpack and just acting like they weren't there.
Yep.
And then you get to the step 5 aspect of it, which, you know, that's the confession. That's like getting it out and talking it through and having people call you out for it. And it's brutal. It's rough. Like the place that I went to, it was not at all like these other rehabs that you see. It wasn't a scam. They don't take your insurance money. Some of the ceiling panels are falling down. The water may or may not work that day. I don't know, but it's just, you know, like I kept questioning when I got back home because people don't understand with recovery. It's the hardest part is not getting sober. The hardest part is staying sober.
Yep.
And I was like, why did this work? Why is it that every time I get banged up, I'm in my head about something, all I have to do is go through this level of reflection. For me, that's my quiet time with God. That's talking through, it's meditating. And that I think that's incredible. Like what marriage does as well. what
Yeah.
having kids does, what being, just getting you in with this demon, this shadow, this whatever it is that you've pushed off for so long, you're finally facing it. And you're like, you realize once you shed light on it, it's not a shadow anymore,
Yeah.
and it's terrifying. It's a lot of work. I don't want people to sit here and think, oh, well, all I have to do is talk about what I struggle with. No, 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 no. There's some work around that, and it's tough.
Because it's choosing something else. Like you said, like it's choosing something else. Because the easy thing for me, and what I've learned in like just years of extensive therapy, because I started therapy in 2017, was kind of my journey. And the reason why I got into therapy was because I was terrified of being a mom. So I got married, Kevin and I got married in 2016, was terrified to become a mom. So I was like, why is that? And it just a lot of like, the mother wound. Because I don't want to have kids, and I don't want, my biggest fear in life is my kid feeling the way I feel about my mom, about me. Like that is like a huge fear of mine of like, I don't want my kid to ever feel the way that I felt.
Right.
And the relationship that I have with my mom specifically. Like I don't want that. And so I had to work through that, I had to start facing it. And it's like people that don't do that type of work, you don't understand. Like, it's not like, oh, I just address my problems and go, okay, like I was sexually abused as a child. My dad died when I was 5. My mom dated alcoholics. My sister was involved in like very, hardcore drugs and is a recovering addict herself, like all this stuff. Okay, yeah, I just talk about it and I move on. It's like, no, like you have to sit with it. You have to learn how to like rewire your brain. You have to like deal with the emotion of it, the impact that it's had on you, how your body holds that in, how do you release it, how do you move forward? And that takes so much mental work. Like it's like a mental workout that I would leave therapy sessions oftentimes like, I'm exhausted, because it's like, yeah, because then there's work. Because the easy thing for me would have been like, oh, I could easily just do what was portrayed. I could easily just do, this is what I'm supposed to do. But instead I chose to do the opposite. I chose to go to school. That's hard when you don't have anybody that's paved the way before. I hustled, I worked, I paid my way through college, and I didn't feel smart. Like academically, I felt like I couldn't hold my own. I went on to graduate from freaking Texas A&M. Like all these things, it's like it took a lot of work and a lot of like mental lifting to be like, I can hold space in these arenas. I deserve to be in these arenas. I am allowed to be in these arenas. My childhood shame, that demon, don't let it hold me back from like the gifts that are before me. Because the easy thing, the easy thing could just be like, I could just be in the same chaos everybody else is in, because that's all that it is. That's just what life is. Like, why not do that? Like the way my therapist put it, she was like, Barbie, you're the lobster that got out of the pot. She's like, everybody in your family is like in this pot of boiling water. Because like, how do you kill a lobster? How do you cook it? You cook it in boiling water. And she's like, you happen to be the lobster that somehow got out, and everybody else is just kind of looking at you like, how did she get out? Like, how'd she, So
yeah, that's interesting. It's also another one is like crabs in a barrel kind of thing. Like when you're all crabs in a barrel, you're just wanting to get out, but
and you pull each other down.
As soon as one gets to the top and stuff. So that's the interesting part too. And that's great that you're there. I literally made a note. I said, watch out for 7 reframes. Because she's a 7, she may tell a highly traumatic story and then immediately follow it up with a joke or a silver lining just to ease the tension in the room. And as an 8, you have the strength to gently pause her and say, hold on, let's sit in that for a second, because what you went through is actually deeply painful. I literally made that note. So it's awesome that you're there. I can go ahead and disregard that note. Oh man, that's crazy. So like the 8 wing gives you that grit. That's the cool thing about being a 7 wing 8, is that gives you the grit and the refusal just to be controlled. And that even means by yourself, like to be controlled by yourself in, the things that you disregard. Did you ever find yourself clashing with your mom, or did you use that 8 energy in order to protect your own peace?
I think I used the 8 energy to protect my own peace. If I had any clashing, it was me and my older sibling. So there was never any animosity between me and my mom. I always just viewed my mom as like, I'm like, you're not going to figure this out for me. You're also not going to help me figure it out. So I'm going to have to figure it out. And like I've said, like my mom was never an obstacle. She never caused like a hindrance, but my mom also was never like a speed ramp where I could or a catalyst that I could jump off of, like a platform. Like she honestly, like, for the lack of a better term, like, she just kind of like existed there and provided me nothing. Like, literally provided me nothing. So yeah, so then if there was any like clashing, like, I feel like the 8-ness in me, which is like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because like I don't know much about like 8s like personalities, but I know in me, like, I am somebody who I can hold my own in confrontation. I don't go seeking confrontation or like, you know, a fight, but if I find myself in one, I can hold my own. And so you're back. And so for me, like, when I would have like, there was always just this jealousy thread between my older sister and I, and it's still very like present. We have a 5-year age gap, and so I think when I was born, she was 5 and struggled with the fact that she had all this attention, and then here comes a sibling, you know, normal things that if you're a parent and have, you know, kids, like, you realize like, oh, like, the addition of a sibling is hard on their little psyche and their little bodies. So I think my sister really struggled with jealousy, and I think my sister also struggled with the fact that her younger sister, in her eyes, was way more successful than she was. And I, you know, and I want to speak carefully because, you know, I don't want to speak for my sister, but that's kind of like my assumptions, the way I make sense of it in my brain, because of how she treated me. She was very verbally abusive to me, and I put up with it my whole life until I got to a point where I was like, I don't have to allow you to speak this over me, because the way I'm going to say this is, I'm going to be very specific. I struggled with suicidal ideation for majority of my life. And I had this very evil voice in my head against me and like my self-worth, and just, I mean, you've worked closely with me. Nobody is harder on me than me. Right. Period. Point blank, the end. But my suicidal ideation was fueled not by my sister specifically, but by the statements she spoke over me. Got it. So she would speak things over me, and, you know, she would tell me that I wasn't good enough. She would tell me that if she died, I wouldn't care. If she killed herself, I wouldn't care. Like, she just would say the most, like, crazy, unhealthy things over me, and it would, like, make me have to be like, am I that terrible of a person? Like, am I actually that terrible of a human being? Because everybody else in my life is like, is nice and like has nothing but kind things to say, like, about my character, that I'm generous, that I'm kind, that I'm fun, I'm funny, I am a good friend, I'm loving, you know. But she was just always so negative, but in a way where it was like, it was personal. And so clashing the Enneagram 8 in me, I mean, I got to a point where it was like, let's go. Like, you want to have this fight, let's have this fight. But it took years for me to get there. And so I would kind of challenge a lot of those beliefs, and I would challenge a lot of those things being said, you know. Like, I'm perceived by my sister as someone who has not come by everything in her life by hard work. She very much views me as somebody who sits up in an ivory tower and everything is just like handed to me. And I know that I know my personal like story of just resilience and trying to get to where I'm at today, that none of that is true. But I've also learned through therapy how to accept a narrative that's not true about me for somebody else and just let it be. Like, I've learned to be the villain in somebody else's story. And I'm like, okay, like, how do you learn to live with that? Which is hard, because like I oftentimes want to like challenge it. I want to challenge. I want to like I want to fight. I like, let's debate. Let's fight it. Let's go toe to toe about that. But yeah, I never clashed with my mom. I think my Enneagram 8-ness came out in that regard of like my mom being like, you're just gonna figure it out on your own. I'm like, okay, great. Like, fine, I'll raise myself. Yeah. So like I figured it out. And then when it came to like defending myself, I had to do that in unhealthy, hostile conversations with my sister. That's why you and I got along so well at camp, because now knowing that you were an Enneagram 8, I was like, he's gonna have my back. Like, if something like, you know, I was like, if something goes awry, I don't have to worry, because I know Michael Cantwell has my back, and he's gonna fight for me. I don't have to fight for me. And so like I kind of got to eat. I can see that in like working with you, working with another friend of ours that you know, same thing with him. And then with Kevin specifically, being married to him, it's not necessarily that like, oh, he's gonna have to fight for me or on my behalf. I think the reason why he and I are together and why God brought us together is because Kevin, oh, I'm gonna get emotional. I didn't expect it. Kevin he in a way takes care of me, and I don't have to worry about taking care of me in ways that I've always had to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And that's just been an answered prayer where like he has been able in his wiring and his personality and what he's good at. He's able to take care of me in ways that I'm like, I don't have to do this now. And that's beautiful because my whole life that wasn't the case.
Yep. That's so powerful. It's incredible when you've been used to your whole life being in this self-preservation mode, the survival mode, and you finally meet a partner where you can just rest.
Yes.
You can confide in them. You
Yeah.
find a friendship that just allows you to be. You don't have to pretend
Or
to put
even
on the
you
mask.
you find a partner who's even willing to like help you do that lifting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think like I struggle with vulnerability sometimes because it's like if I lay down this wall and I let you in, I don't know what you're gonna do with what's on the other side of this wall.
Mm-hmm.
So the act of even just laying that down specifically is already hard. And so it's a really beautiful thing when you have the ability to be vulnerable and know that like the person can handle what they're receiving in that vulnerability and then say, I'm willing to help you lift this. I'm willing to help you bear this. I'm willing to burden this with you. You don't have to do it alone. Because that's the, the other thing about, I think, in my wiring too. I don't like feeling alone. I don't like feeling, which goes back to being trapped. When you're trapped, it's like oftentimes you're like, I don't like feeling alone. I don't like feeling sad. And I don't like feeling mad.
Yeah.
If I could just be happy.
Yeah. That's simple. Why is everyone not doing that?
Yeah.
That's weird.
If I could just live, laugh, love, I'd be great.
Yeah. Oh my God. In cursive, in the kitchen.
On my shiplap.
Oh my gosh. Oh, shout out Joanna Gaines.
There I go again, talking really beautifully and romantically about my husband and then being like.
I was just about to say it too, but hey, look, you're at least aware of it. That's huge. You're catching it. Oh man. Yeah, it really is cool. I like what you said about the people that are willing to get in the trenches with you. I think that if you have people that are going to solve everything for you, it doesn't teach you anything. And I've been bad about that in my past because that's how my mom is. She's not going to love you through it. She's not going to care. She just wants to solve it and fix it, because if she can provide things for you, if she can fix things for you, then she's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And you can't leave her. And I see that like with myself. I wrap my worth up a lot in solving people's problems or thinking that I could solve people's problems. It's an ego trip for me as well. Whereas what I should do is find the place of empathy of saying, hey, I see you're struggling. I'm here with you.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. You don't have to struggle alone. We'll struggle together. It's also a dangerous aspect too, because you can also do it to your detriment. But that's the beauty of love. And people nowadays especially, but we attribute love with a partner with some level of an emotion. Love is not an emotion. Love is an action. You choose to love somebody. If love were an emotion, I mean, think about like I wake up one day and I'm feeling great. I wake up the next day and I'm pissed off. What if love were that roller coaster, right? Yeah. So it's not all unicorn or, rainbows and unicorn farts. It's like you just got to get to this point of understanding that like I'm going to actively love and I'm going to fail, I'm going to screw up, but the next day I'm going to do better. And that's so cool when you find someone who's ready to lock in. Like Scott, I'm an 8. I'm a bully. I want to get things done. I want to push. Skylar's a 9. She wants to avoid. She wants to withdraw. Boy, does that not jive with my 8-ness. That does not work well. And I can see myself like constantly trying to drag things out of her. Not because I'm trying to be a bully, but because I'm like, hey, for you to grow in this moment, like push yourself. I know you got it in you. Yeah. But for her, sometimes the way that I'm presenting that is like, that's just making her retreat more and more and more. Yep. And so that balance is like, she's helping me find this softer side. Yep. And I'm helping her find this more like rigid side. Like, let's go. Let's get this done. Yeah.
And so I'm married to an Enneagram 1. So, like Kevin is an internal processor and I move fast. Like, you talk like mentally, I'm like, I mean, even in these moments, it's like, okay, let's talk. I'll go deep. How do we get back out? Like, how do you know? And so Kevin, he is someone who moves slow. He moves methodical. He takes his time. So we've had to learn in our marriage how to meet each other there. Like Kevin has learned, how do I get on the roller coaster with Barbie? And how do I go down into this emotion with her, knowing that we're going to resurface?
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that I've had to slow down and truthfully accept the fact that it may take my sweet Enneagram 1 husband 3 weeks to process something, and that he's not going to have a conversation with me right there in the moment. That way we can just like move on and get through it,
Right.
or whatever. Or like even an idea. Like I'll say an idea to Kevin and he will be like, great, now I have like 3.5 weeks to think about this. And I'm like, why can't, and so like I've had to learn to meet him in that, where it's like, yeah, genuinely, it may take Kevin 3 weeks to handle a lot of what I've just thrown at him. But Kevin also has learned to like hop on for the ride, like, come on, like, let's do this.
It's important. I understand, like, and the ones typically do that because they want to make everything perfect. So they don't want to make a mistake.
Yep.
But it's like there are times where like if the house is burning down, maybe we shouldn't sit and think about why the house is burning down and what are the 10 ways. No, let's just do it. Let's jump out the window together.
Yes.
And I get it, because Skylar does the same thing. Like we'll have a deep conversation or something that we're really working on in our relationship, or an argument we may have had.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we're here. The kid's asleep. Like, let's just do it now.
Yep.
We got maybe an hour. Let's just figure this out now. And she's like, I need time to process that.
Yeah.
No, let's do it now.
Yeah. Literally,
it's tough.
I feel like Kevin and I should like have somebody follow us that's like into the Enneagram. They should follow us around Disney World and how we do Disney World. Because you could not talk about, because like when an Enneagram 1 is healthy, they go to a 7. When a 7 is unhealthy and stressed, they go to a 1. So I am all of the great things of Kevin when I'm healthy, and he is all the things of me when I am in unhealth. But when we go to Disney World, you talk about Kevin's like maximizing time, efficiency, perfection. We're going to get this done. And I'm over here like, we're about to have the best freaking time ever. Let's do this. And it's just
Turn
like,
up.
literally, like, it's so funny to me when I see like just our personalities in that environment. It's just like, it's matrimony, truly.
Right. That's fascinating. That should be a series. That should be a mental health series. If I could afford it,
Honestly.
it'd be like couples therapy at
Sponsors.
Disney. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Let's get on it. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about like the waking up to reality, which is, to me, just means like unleashing and letting go of those toxic patterns, figuring out how to move on from it. So what's the rock bottom? Was there a rock bottom turning point in the relationship with your mom where you just realized, I got to change the rules of engagement here?
Yeah, there was a rock bottom. So as I've shared, like I grew up just the I'm gonna run this back a little bit, Michael. So let's see. I grew up very much being the recipient of others' choices, whether good or poor choices. My mom, I don't want to like, diagnose her or whatever, because I don't know. But I know, in knowing my mom's personality, I think my mom is an unhealthy Enneagram 7. My mom and I are very similar. It's actually something I wrestle with, as knowing that like we are very wired, a lot alike. But I think my mom's undealt with grief made her a very unhealthy Enneagram 7. And so oftentimes when you're like around like an Enneagram 7, I've seen this to be true even myself and just some relationships in my life, we can be flaky and we can prioritize ourselves versus the needs of others. We can also be non-committal, flaky in the sense of like if something else comes up that sounds better than something else we've already committed, we're going to do the other thing that just came up versus what we had previously committed to. And so I can like look back on my life and see my mom just making choices where she doesn't necessarily see how the choices she's making cause an emotional impact on somebody else. So like as a kid growing up, my mom would like travel without me and my sister, and she'd go to places, like Caribbean places, cruises. She'd go to Shreveport. She'd go to Oklahoma. She'd go to Vegas. And it's like, great, I'm left with my older sister, who's now having to be the parent, and so that's just like that's a common theme of what my mom, because like, again, you frame it of like, well, she deserves it. She deserves to go have some fun, but it's also like, yeah, but you're also the parent, and we don't know if the lights are going to be turned on or if you've paid the electric bill before you've left for Vegas. Like there's things that are happening where it's like, we're already in so much financial insecurity. Why are you making choices to now go gamble So like for me, the rock bottom moment was after I had my son. He was 2 years old, and I was working on just really trying to reconnect with my family. I had felt this pressure that I had put on myself to reconnect with my family because I was like, my kid deserves to have a grandma and my kid deserves to have an aunt. I just felt somewhere here to like, I have to like make this work. I have to reconnect. And my mom just like made a choice to do something that was inappropriate, and it caused a trigger in my brain, and it just made me realize, I was like, she's not changed. She did something where it was a moment where it was like, yeah, that is something fun for you, and something that everybody else views as like a fun thing that you did, but I see that in a different light. That impacts me in a different way, given my past, given the environment in which like you've raised me in, given this. And that just really impacted me. And it caused a very big emotional response out of me to really face some demons that I had been, I guess, like kind of like putting in this like cage of like, you're okay over there, like. And so for me, that was like the rock bottom moment of just like, I can't continue to act like everything's okay. I can't continue to forge a relationship given what's happening and knowing that like a lot of what I grew up in as a kid is still happening.
Yeah.
And knowing that as an adult and having the language for it, it's like I'm not going to put my kids in environments that are going to make them feel uncomfortable and that are just outright just not safe for them. It's just not safe for them. And you could call me a fuddy-duddy. You could call me, pretentious. You could say that I'm being asinine. I don't care. When it comes to my kids, it's like, no, like it is my role as their mom to be their protector and there's this mama bear in me. And so I just kind of hit this rock bottom where it was like this incident that my mom did. I was like, this is unacceptable. And here's why. And I was very truthful with her about why it upset me, because it's like what she did. I was basically like, you're also a grandma, like you're putting things out there that like, your grandkids are going to see or like know about. And it's just like, what's the disconnect? And so I just reached this place with her where I was like, we don't have any emotional connection from childhood. We don't have any emotional connection from like my adulthood. Like there really is no emotional connection. So why am I fighting so hard for this? And how do I, not having such a bonded mother-daughter relationship with somebody, how do I then trust and allow you to have a grandma relationship with my kids? Right. Because I don't even know what this is. It's just like, if I don't know what this is, how can I give you the space to do that here? Like it just is hard, Right. So I don't know if that makes sense or answers your question, but like, obviously I want to protect just like that situation for my mom, given that I know like this is going to go out to people. I don't want to get into like the nitty gritty details of it, but there was just this particular instant that caused a triggered memory of like something that happened to me in regards to sexual abuse as a kid. And I just was like, I can't do it. I can't. Like, you haven't changed. And then, to my mom's credit, here I go again. To my mom's credit, it's like, I think she just has a lot of undealt with grief, which is a shame. Yeah. Just that generation. I just think there's a lot of things that my mom hasn't truly faced or dealt with. Losing her husband. You cannot convince me that my mom doesn't have trauma from that.
Right.
Or undealt with pain from that incident and that situation, and she just hasn't had the space or the time or the freedom to deal with it. She very much was like put in a pressure cooker of like, put your big girl panties on and figure it out. And she did her best. And even though she did her best, there were still some really sad realities from what her best was. Yeah. So
it is, it's very tough. And the underlying theme of that for me was like, you're just seeing these trigger points and these ways of your mom acting that brought up a lot of the hurt from the past. And I think that's something that generation just doesn't get, because they're very much like expectation driven, and that's their parents grew up very frugal and didn't have a lot and whatnot. So for them, it was this like providing of material comforts somehow or another equates to me being
a good parent.
Right. And it's very conditional. A
Yeah.
lot of, a lot of our parents' generations of raising kids is it's a very conditional love kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing, I struggle with my mom is like she wants to spin the story of like, well, he's hanging on to all of this hurt from his past. I already dealt with that. And when you grow up and you want to move on and you realize I was blessed with two parents who don't know how to apologize for anything that they've done, I could either hang on to that as a resentment, which ultimately just affects me, doesn't bother them, or I could forgive them and I could move on knowing that I'm not going to tolerate it anymore.
Yep.
And like that's the thing that my mom doesn't understand because she doesn't want to have a conversation about it. But I don't hold the past against you. But if you're repeating the same behavior that will ultimately lead to the same actions, that is what I grew up in. And that shit won't fly in my household. Nope. My kid won't see that. And as I said to you earlier, disrespectfully, I'll burn every effing bridge that I have to make sure that my kid doesn't have to deal with that.
Yep.
So that's the problem with our parents not wanting to deal or work through their, finding that emotional regulation.
They don't know how to take accountability.
No,
like, I really think it's that. They don't understand accountability.
For sure. And I think I think, not letting them play the victim and not letting them, get off of this. But like, that's their generation is that they were promised everything.
Yes.
All you have to do is get to high school
Work
and college
hard.
and go work at a job for 40 years. You'll retire and have a great life.
Yep.
And it wasn't given to them. It was the end of the Vietnam War. You had all the Cold War crap. You had all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so they developed these core traits, and I think I wrote some of them down, but like they became competitive, optimistic, highly individualistic, and status conscious. And that's all it was about is like, let me keep up with the Joneses now. Let me, but they can't. Like my mom is 60 something years old and her husband was just caught cheating on her. Well, he's the only, like she's a teacher. She's not going to retire. She can't retire.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're financially trapped. They ended up buying a house that they can't afford.
Yep.
They're living paycheck to paycheck because they don't know how to manage their finances because they expected everything was just going to, if I just follow the rules, everything will work out for me.
Yep.
And it didn't work that way. And so it's interesting how that develops this whole generation's personality because now they become the victim.
Well,
Woe is me. It's everybody else's fault.
Or it's like what you said, like, they were, especially like, and I can look at my mom's situation, and we chatted about this before we like officially started, but it's like, I always ran up against when it came about my mom is that I was being forced to be like, your mom's a great mom because she's a single mom who lost her husband and she's like making sure you're fed, making sure you have clothes, and making sure you have a house. And I'm like, okay, great. But I'm also a girl who's going to start her period and is going to like do things, and I'm going to like evolve and change and grow like biologically, emotionally, like. And my mom, I mean, Michael, it's things like that. Like my mom never sat me down and talked to me about like having periods. Like when I talk about like that, it's like, that is an emotional thing for a girl. And like to not have a mom that's willing to sit in the awkward about like your body changing, like puberty. Like I went through puberty, no guidance. Like that, when you think about it, that's crazy. Like I was 13 years old, 14 years old, learning about the female body, like on my own, no mom. And like I would think, and my friends, I had friends in college who had just had such open relationships with their mom. I mean, talking about things that they did at a party or whatever, and like their mom's like counseling them, loving them, being disappointed in them, coming back around to support them, gracious towards them, just like this healthy, clearly it's like riling something up in me. But it's like, it always frustrated me of like, why am I now being punished for the lack of emotional need that I did need from a mom? Because they just didn't deal with their own emotions. Like, I was just, it was like, because I'm doing these things, you should just be happy. It's like, I'm following the quadratic formula. If you plug in these numbers, you're going to get to this solution. And my mom was very much like, look at all I'm doing for you, and I'm doing it by myself. No. I don't have a spouse that's doing all this. And it's also like, yeah, but mom, we're growing up in a lot of instability due to your lack of financial education. You're writing hot checks in Walmart. You're not talking to me about things that just need to be talked about. Not even like, oh, like a girl made fun of me. Like, no, mom, I'm a girl and I'm going to have a period. So like, talk to me about that. And I know, like, we talked about your audience, like, and I know there may be some, female viewers or like listeners that like may relate to that of like, yeah, like I didn't have a mom that walked me through that path. Like, how do I be a woman? How do I become a woman? How do I, like, what does it mean to be a wife? Like, I didn't even see that either, you know? And or now, how do I even be a mom? Like, how do I change a diaper? How do I take care of an infant? All that to say, I didn't have the nurturing component that I desperately needed as a kid who had just lost her dad. That's the thing that like gets forgotten all the time. It's like, oh, look at your mom. Your mom just lost her husband. Well, yeah, I was just a kid and I had just lost my dad. And so now I don't have a dad to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. You were at my wedding. Like, you know, like I walked half the aisle to honor my dad. And like, and I didn't have a mom that was like going wedding dress shopping with me or like being excited about the details. Like when I have friends that are like, oh my gosh, my mom's so annoying. She's doing all this stuff. I just kind of like kick back and listen and just smile. I'm like, man, I wish I felt aggravated by my mom's over involvement in my life.
Yeah. It's tough too because we get handed all of this, and one thing that helps me work through it is realizing that you can't give what you don't have.
Yes.
And because our parents don't work on themselves, because they would rather buy things to make them happy or make this appearance in order to make everyone, it's all a facade for them. And so I think the parents' generation now is being faced with the reality that we've woken up to mental health.
Yeah.
Because it's been prevalent. I mean, since getting sober in 2021, I've lost 4 friends to suicide. It is an ongoing issue. It's going to continue to be an ongoing issue. I don't know if there's ever going to be a solution for it as a society, but we can drop those numbers. Men are dying at a staggering rate because of suicide. People in general are. The depression levels, the anxiety levels are through the roof. And obviously you have cultural issues and political issues and financial issues that all, you know, exacerbate that situation. But
well,
that's the one thing.
Talk about, or go ahead, Michael.
But that's like the one thing that I realize is that like our parents couldn't give that to us because they never had it themselves.
Yeah.
And as far as the argument goes, because my mom does this too, as far as the argument goes with like I put a roof over your head and food on your plate, I want everyone listening to get very close. You were doing that for yourself too. Shut the F up. Like it does. That's self-preservation. You don't get to tag me along into that. That's called being a parent. If you provided for your kid, if you gave them food, if you made sure they had clothes on their back, those are the bare minimums to make sure that CPS wasn't called. Yeah. All you had to do was just make sure that kid survived, and that's called being a parent. Raising a child is giving them the things that allow them to live without you, allow them to be able to be better. I want Wyatt to be a better husband than I am. I want him to be a better father than I am. And I want to cry every single time I spend time with his family, watching him be a husband and a father and a man, because I did my job. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to raise a child. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to be able to raise this beautiful boy and not just give him a roof over his head and food on the plate and clothes on his back, but to help him understand how to be the best version of a man that he can be. Yeah. Because I'm with you in that. I don't have a dad I can call. Hey, help me out. Hey, I don't have a dad. Well, what am I doing? It's 3:00 in the morning. My kid won't shut up. Like, well, he's just screaming. What do I do? Like, how do I handle this? Dads deal with a lot of anger. When he's crying and screaming, I get mad, not at him, but because I can't fix it. What do I do? And I don't have anybody to help me with that. And that I will forgive people. I will never forget that though. Like, like I'm never gonna be able to rely on my parents to be parents.
No,
that's it. It's over.
Yeah, and then it's like then you get into like the grandparent dynamic, and you're just like, and then because that's the thing, it's like I argued with my family where it was like, why do you feel entitled to now like be involved in my kids' lives? You weren't there for me when I was a kid in the way that like I needed, and like, now this is just awkward for me because I have the kid. It's my children. They're my children. Well, they're God's first, and then they're mine and Kevin's. And now I am that person that I needed, that my inner child needed for a living human being. And that's just so hard. Because, becoming a mom was so hard, just so hard for me because of my lack of being mothered. And I was raised very much through TV, escape very much through movies. Like I was very much like, I watched so much TV and I learned so much about like what a family should be based off of television. So yeah, I'm with you. It's just like, it is a weird, it's just, when you add in that component, it's like now I am this, not only for my kids, but also now for my own inner child. Because oftentimes I'm having to tell my inner child, like, hey, you're safe. You're fine. There's no danger here. Because I grew up in a very loud environment where, like, if it got loud, that meant something was about to pop off. Yeah. And kids are loud. Like, kids are so loud. And as they and then when you have two and they're like playing together and you're in like a 100 square foot home, when noise starts to elevate, I can feel my nervous system being like, danger is coming. Yeah. And I start to get out of sorts, and it's like, hey, there's no danger here. Like, I'm having to tell my inner child that, like, hey, you're safe. Like, there's no danger here. Now get on board and come on. Yeah. That's the hard part is getting to the point when you don't have parents that gave you any of the insight. Framework.
Like,
framework.
You have to self-parent, and you have to do that during times where you're still growing. Mm-hmm. That's tough. Like, I tell some of the guys that I've connected with through YouTube and stuff, like, there are times where you have to literally talk to yourself as you're the parent. Like, hey, things are going to be okay. We're going to sit here and not move, and we're going to let this pass. Like, that's tough.
It is tough.
We have covered a lot of dark and heavy stuff. Yeah. So let's end it off with a little bit of hope here. So I got 3 questions.
Okay, come on.
About faith, about grieving, and about advice.
Okay.
And you can make this quick fire if you want, whatever. But as a Christian, there's a lot of pressure from the church to honor your father and your mother and simply forgive and forget, right? Yeah. How do you reconcile your faith with the psychological necessity of protecting yourself from a toxic parent?
Okay. Well, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. You know this. So I came to faith in college. So I want to give that as just like a preface for the listeners. So for me, I didn't grow up very much in like a religious, legalistic background. So I, have been, I guess, in a Christian walk for probably like the last 13 years. So like not even like, it's like 1/3 of my life or about of it, if I'm doing math correctly, which we all know I'm bad at math. So for me, I've had interesting conversations with people in Christian circles about my relationship with my mom. Whereas in the past, I had people who I would count as like Christian mentors say, like, never give your mom the leg up to say that you didn't try. And so it was like, when I was in college, like, I always made every effort to like go see my mom. My mom did not move mountains or make a whole lot of effort to come visit me. But whenever I was like back in town or near my mom, I would make an effort to like grab lunch with my mom, and like, so it was like those types of things where people were saying, don't give your mom a reason to say that you didn't try. Like, you need to keep trying. But I think in that effort of trying, I was exhausting myself, putting so much energy into something that just wasn't changing. And it just wasn't reaping something that I kind of was expecting. Like, I have always held out this hope that my mom and I will be best friends. Yeah. That I will have the mother-daughter relationship that I've seen a lot of my peers have in a healthy way, that I envy, truthfully, that I like envy. And that just wasn't happening. And so I was always met with this disappointment of just like this like unmet expectation. But then it like kind of like turned into this thing of like, well, Barbie, you have to keep fighting because, who's going to be the witness for her? Who's going to like witness God to her? Who's going to give Jesus to her? And I'm like, that sole responsibility, like the weight of the reality of my mom's soul and where my mom's soul is going to end up should not only fall onto me. I can't bear that responsibility. Yeah. So I have gotten to a point where in my relationship with God, I feel like I hold out hope. I look at my mom and I's relationship as this massive black hole. Like it is void. But if you know anything about black holes, if you poke the tiniest little hole in it, and if light is able to break through, that black hole disappears. So I have been able to come to a place internally within my soul where I hold out hope, but it is like the smallest, like I'm talking like a pin-sized little prick just in that black hole. And that way I'm not met with that overwhelmingly weighty, debilitating disappointment of not having what my inner child deserves from a mom, which is like right relationship and health and love. In my heart of hearts, when I reconcile it with God, God knows my heart better than me. I mean, scripture says that, who's to know the heart better than man, who's to know the heart better than man than God himself, right? Like that's in Jeremiah. Everybody always quotes Jeremiah 29:11. You follow it, and everybody always talks about like, God's going to give me the desires of my heart. And it's like, actually, what I've learned is that God doesn't necessarily give us the desires of our heart if our desire is not in line with what he desires.
Bingo,
and for me, God knows my heart towards my mom better than me. And when I just kind of have like these self check-ins about my mom and my relationship with my mom, if I feel any bitterness, if I feel any resentment, if I feel any like unrighteous anger, that's when I know I need to be prompted to do something, because God desires reconciliation. But if I check in with my heart and I feel at peace, I still feel love and grace towards my mom, given the fact that our relationship is the reality of what it is, then I feel God telling me, you're in a good place. Be there. Because what worth is it trying to witness, using Christian evangelical terms, to witness or to preach God to somebody who themselves is still just so caught up in their own chaos. And so I've learned to kind of like alleviate that burden. And like I said, honestly, the wildest thing is just I went no contact with my mom for the first time really in my life. And I have felt more at peace in my personal life. And coupled that also with therapy, I just want everybody to know I am heavily involved in my therapy. I've been doing a lot of extensive stuff given my past. I've gone through recovery programs too, not for alcoholism, but just for childhood sexual abuse, anger, and just some stuff that came up after being a mom. And so going through all of that, I think God has just brought me to a standpoint of grace, and that like grace is equally offered to my mom ever still. I just don't know when that moment may happen on this side of heaven. And so I kind of reconcile it by knowing that God knows the matters of my heart better than I do myself. And if I just go really internal, I'm like, I don't feel any evilness towards my mom. Yeah. Like you were saying, I don't feel any like ill will or wish her harm or anything that is just not in accordance to God's heart and his thinking. So since that's not where I land in heart and mind, I did that backwards, in heart and mind. Then I feel at peace with that. And for people who, and my therapist has given me a lot of freedom too, because if people in those circles ask, I just say, and if I don't know them really well, I'm like, you know what, that's just something that my mom and I's relationship is what it is, and that's what it is. And I don't allow them to speak into it, because I think sometimes people don't know how to talk in uncomfortable situations, or they've never been presented with something that's outside of their norm. Yeah. And so they'll ask, they're oftentimes like they're just curious and they don't mean any harm. But sometimes I've had women give me advice unwillingly, and I'm like, that's so great. I love that. Thank you. But that's not the reality for me or what it looks like. Because I do believe God is a God of reconciliation, but I think there's a caveat there that you cannot be reconciled in right relationship if a person isn't within right relationship with themselves and God themselves. Like, I just don't think that's how it works. Yeah.
Okay, so continuing on with that. Yeah. Here's the next one.
Okay.
So healing often requires grieving the mother that you deserved but never had. And you've already addressed that. You've touched on that a good bit. So have you been able to fully grieve that relationship, and what does acceptance look like today?
I would say I don't think I have fully grieved it, because I just don't like feeling sad. And so I'm still working through grieving that. I think I have fully grieved what I expected family to look like in that sense. I really, my therapist made me do an exercise, which was really helpful. She was like, I want you to go find like a coffee mug that is like the just cheesiest family like saying thing mug or whatever. And she's like, spend time, be thoughtful, go find this coffee mug. She's like, and then I want you to go find a place where you can just smash that thing into the ground, because I have been just in a heavily like grieving cycle around just family, and like my family specifically, and have had to learn to accept a lot of things that have been said to me and not retaliate. And instead of retaliating, like put up boundaries and just be like, you know what, I'm not entertaining this anymore. And here's why, and this is now a boundary. But yeah, so I found that coffee mug, like I said, and I just like, I smashed it I really did. It's kind of like cheesy, cathartic, but it works. And it
Yeah.
just felt like a release of just like expectation, pressure I was putting on myself to make this family be like this family. But in regards to my mom, I think I'm always going to be grieving that because I now have a daughter. So like I, in a way, like think as I develop my relationship with her and as we grow together, I'm going to be like just really walking through a grieving cycle as new things present itself, as like she just ages and develops. And I feel very honored that I have a daughter. I love both my kids. Truthfully, I love both of them for their different like wirings and personalities. Specifically with my sweet daughter, my sweet Madison, is because she's my redemption baby. And I just like when I was pregnant with her, I just felt God, and I'm sure you can probably really relate having a son, Michael, but I didn't feel the same way when I had James in the sense of like, oh, like I really get to like heal a lot of like my inner child or like realizing like a lot of like things that I lacked coming up. But with Madison specifically, I just felt the Lord really speak to me. Redeemed, redemption, redo, like literally just like so like every like synonym of the word. Because it's hard. Like I desire a mom. I always have. Like I can see it in my life. I've always like attached emotionally to women who were very mentor like or very motherly, very nurturing because I just didn't have that. And I'm like, how do I do that? How do I be that? I didn't have that as a kid. How do I do that? And like you said, like my mom, I mean, she lives, 30 minutes away, 35 minutes away, and I never see her. And sometimes I think about that. And when I do, it makes me sad. But I've learned to be like, okay, I can sit and be sad about this and be like, that's sad. But yeah, I think in raising a daughter myself, I'm always going to be grieving that relationship. I don't think it will ever come to like a full close. But I think I am in a place of like accepting the reality of the relationship for what it is, but not allowing it to inhibit me from being the type of mom I desired for my own kids. And then specifically regarding towards like raising a daughter, to be confident and to be nurturing and to know what that's like. And to like lean into just her wiring and her personality and like be there for her when life throws waves at her,
Yeah. Yeah.
And oftentimes maybe not even say anything, but just being there,
Right. That's the cool thing about parenting is like I'm real bad about thinking that everything has to be perfect. I have to do this, this, and this. And really, if you're just there sometimes, like obviously don't rest on your laurels and don't just, be complacent. But like sometimes it's just being there. Why it's 16 months old. He's at the point now where it's like he doesn't always just want to play. He just wants me to sit in the room with him. And that's so wonderful to me because I'm a quality time guy.
Yeah.
And sometimes just sitting with someone is enough. I don't need you to say anything. I don't need you to do anything. Just be there.
Yep.
And going back to what you talked about earlier, just be in the trenches, just be present. But it is really tough and I'm glad that you brought up that perspective because like for me having a son, I'm always going to want my dad. I'm always going to want dad to be in my life. I'd love to have a dad that I could just, call up and, we can just rap about some nonsense and we get each other. I probably will never get that. And the hardest part, and I learned this coming out of rehab and now I'm learning it again with my mom, but the hardest part is like grieving someone who's still alive. And in order to do that, one, you also nailed this. You have to accept it. I got to accept that my parents aren't going to be the healthy parents that I needed growing up, and they're not going to be the healthy parents that I need now. Hopefully something changes, but right now I got to accept that reality, and they're not going to be present. And then two, I've got to grieve, and I've got to grieve the loss of those parents. I've got to grieve the loss of the grandparents. I've got to grieve that reality that it's not going to be that way. And that's unfortunate because I would love for my child to see what it was like to have healthy grandparents. But fortunately, it's cool how God works. Like you start getting that nonsense out of your life. I've grown 10 times what I thought I would because of that, because I've gotten rid of that toxic element. But then also the amount of people that are healthy that God's put in. Like it's crazy how you get rid of one toxic person and 10 healthy people show up.
Yeah.
And it's like, where were you guys the whole time? It's like they're not going to be around toxic crap. So of course, but it is very difficult and it's tough.
My therapist put it like with what you're talking about. Like I was really sad in a session talking about just like my kids. Like wasn't even like me anymore. It was just like,
Yeah.
I want my kids, like my kids deserve a grandma, and you know, from my side, because they have great grandparents.
Yeah.
But I was like, they deserve a grandma. And like, it just was that pain of like, my kid's gonna lack that in the same way that I lacked my mom. And my therapist gave me great perspective, and she's like, you're gonna have great surrogates. Like, you're gonna have great surrogacy, like grandparents, and you're gonna have great surrogate aunts and uncles. And I mean, we're involved in a community here where like, yeah, like one friend, like James was talking the other day about like a memory, because memory is now happening, which is wild. Just wait until Wyatt gets there.
Oh,
And James was like talking about Halloween, and he was like, yeah, Mom, my uncle so-and-so and my cousin so-and-so and these are not his aunt. This is not his uncle.
Yeah.
This is not his cousin. They're just like our good friends. But in James's brain, he's equating them as like family.
that's family.
And yeah, like that's family. And it's just like, what a gift. Because it was just like, yeah, like exactly what you're saying, like me being so afraid of what my kid's going to lack. But like them not being healthy, just tenfold, just having like people that are healthy come in and step into my life and in my kids' lives in ways that are like, you are like a mom and you are like a grandma. You're very much like a sister. You're very much like an aunt. And like being able to fill some of those gaps for myself and my kids, like that's God. Like that's just like when
beautiful.
you're involved in
100%.
like God's family.
That's the beauty of people too, is that we get so mixed up in being this side or that or
Yep.
this, and it's like at the end of the day we're all human beings trying to figure out this mess, and the purpose, you know, that's one of the constant questions of humanity, like what's my purpose? Why am I
Yep.
here? And look at the person next to you. You know, that's kind of like my beef with the church, is I understand going and doing missions overseas and all that. Why don't you talk to your neighbor?
Dude, yeah, same.
How about the
Whole
person
other
that
podcast.
lives?
You're gonna have to
Oh,
have
yeah.
me come back, because yes.
How about the person that lives 100 yards away from the church that's never stepped inside the building
Yeah.
because everyone's better than them? You know, like that kind of like why are we not doing that? To
Yep.
seek the welfare of the city. How
Yeah.
about we read the Bible?
Yeah. How about we not be a whitewashed tomb?
Go,
Like,
let's go. Anyways, that'll be the next podcast we do for sure. All right, so wrapping all this up. If there is a woman listening right now who's exhausted from trying to earn the love of the mother, of their mother, whether they be toxic or narcissistic, what is the most vital piece of psychological or spiritual advice that you can give her?
I'm gonna say what I oftentimes have to tell myself: be your own mom.
That's
I have
awesome.
to. That literally, like, just and I'm gonna get emotional, but because I get that exhaustion, like you talking about that, like, and oftentimes I have to sit with myself as an adult, as like a 33-year-old woman, and I have to like literally like physically hug myself sometimes and just be like, I got you, and I'm gonna come through, and I'm gonna be dependable, and I'm gonna nurture you, I'm gonna love you, I'm gonna allow your tears, I'm gonna allow your sadness, I'm gonna allow your full self. But I would tell that woman that's listening in, it's like, be your own mom. It sucks, but like, be your own mom. And love yourself, and genuinely, like, I've learned that just through like carving out space for myself. Like you know, I ran a marathon. I've gotten into like just enjoying like doing some long and trying to do endurance activities, even though I'm not good at it. But I do it because it gives me the time and the ability to like really connect with my brain and my body, and like be the type of mom I need to be for myself. Like telling myself like, hey, no, like you got this. You can keep going. Or if I'm feeling pain, it's like, hey, yeah, this sucks right now. You're hurting. What do you need? Do you need a Band-Aid? Do you need electrolytes? Do you need some water? Do you need a walk? Like, what do you know, and just like nurturing, like that nurturing component. And just, if I'm feeling sad for something I lack, I just sit with that, whatever I feel like I'm lacking. And I just like physically hold myself, and I just go, I got you. I got you too. Because I know like I'm hugging my inner child. So I would tell that woman, stop exhausting yourself and expecting your mom to be the mom you need her to be, and just be the mom you need to be for yourself.
It's awesome. Be your own mom.
Be your own mom.
T-shirt ideas, hats, mugs.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And you too, Michael. You be your own mom too. Because
Yeah.
I know, like, you
Yeah.
oftentimes, like, and it's a kindred thing. Like, I have a son, and I'm like, God, I would love nothing for my son to be a mama's boy, and for me to just, like, see him be an incredible man and to love and take care of another woman. And so, yeah, for you too, Michael, in the moments where you do need, like, some softness, like, you be your own mom too. So, yeah. Everybody
That's
just be
awesome.
your own mom.
There it is. Y'all heard it here. Y'all heard it here. Barbie, this is long overdue. Thank you so much.
Of
Thank you
course.
for the insight. And we're going to do it again.
Yeah, we
We're
are.
going to do it again. We'll post this. This is going to be a long episode, but that's what a guest appearance should be. But thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
for the insight. Thank you for the vulnerability, for sure. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Do you have anything that you're working on that you want people to pay attention
no,
to?
I just want to say thank you to you. And like, I'm so proud of you. And for those of you that are listening in and are just parasocial with this guy here, Michael Cantwell at Sober Psychology, he's an awesome guy. And I'm just really proud of you. So I just want to affirm you one more time. I know I already have, just your story, your character arc, how God has seen you and brought you through, and how you have seen yourself and brought yourself through. You're an incredible dad. You're an incredible husband. You're an incredible friend. And I'm just honored to get to share this space today and for us to just get to chit chat like old friends.
For sure. For sure. Thanks, Barbie. Thank you all for listening. You made it this far. Go ahead and subscribe. Again, helps out. It's also free. So stop being stingy and just hit the subscribe button.
Don't be a jerk. Just subscribe.
Yeah, for sure. Another t-shirt idea. Anyways, thanks, guys. As always, keep your head up. Keep your heart open. Go help somebody. Love you guys.